around 230, somewhere around in there, page 230, or we in that neighborhood, folks.
Where the
why I have my
spexes
marker
are?
at, yeah. We're not only at 13, so we're still in 12, I guess.
We were almost to the end of 13.
12.
Well, I mean, yeah, 12.
Okay,
My
so,
last mark was on 227.
I've marked for 2:30, I don't know whether that's from my reading or something that he said.
so what's the significance of what we've been looking at thus far?
For, in this chapter?
No, just kind of, we're more than halfway through the book.
Okay.
So, considering that this was designed to answer a question of the origins of your faith, what have you picked up from this so far? Is it, what has it answered the questions? What have you got out of this? And like you said, your group is down to 3 or 4. So everybody in your group bailed.
Oh, hey, Randy, I didn't see you come in. For me, I mentioned this before, and it's just me. Nobody else has to have this concept, but it's just me. It seems to me, and I mentioned this before, what I've gleaned from this so far is that it is cyclical, and that chart you had kind of confirmed it, and every so many thousands of years, history repeats itself. So to me, it's nothing new under the sun. When they talked about Horus and Set and all those things, it's Kanu, and the names just change.
That's right.
Yeah. Even when it comes to, like in this chapter, kind of reinforces it when it talks about death and the resurrection and how that occurred. It's no different than what we see today in our era or our generation. And so it's just a matter of how you apply it. We can see the misuse, like as we go further, we can see from our Bible's perspective how history has been kind of contorted.
So, if you were to say, okay, the one thing I've gathered from this above all else is what?
That God is, still is, and was. That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
What would you say about this?
I think the message that I would have is that the historical aspect of what we're learning has a lot of input in me as it relates to the factual piece of it that we're looking at, trying to search for the facts rather than search for someone else's opinion of what the facts are. The spiritual side of it obviously doesn't change anything because we're not dealing with the spiritual side of it.
Right.
We're strictly dealing with, here's where it is and it was, based on what we find in the Word. And because we find it, if we're able to find it, what we found keeps pushing the issue all the way back to that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way I'm perceiving this thing.
The thing I think I would like for you to get from this, if nothing else, is not just that the origin of not just man, but the concept of God and religion is an African concept. Now, what really, hopefully, we will have learned, especially when we get into this next chapter, is that when Europeans colonized the world, the thing they did that was most troubling is they colonized information about the world. So everything we have now is a European interpretation, i.e. spin, on something that is way older than the people we refer to as Europeans to begin with. And that's kind of like what we were talking about in the car, that all of us have on one level or another accepted the European version of religion and God clearly because that's where it came from. I mean, that's natural. We have the King James version of the Bible, or blah blah, or John Wesley, or in my case it was Eleanor G. White. Okay, all these are white people's take on something that was African to begin with, and they broke off and took their little piece of the pie and started what we know to be a religion, be it whatever is Methodist, Episcopalian, Adventist, Catholic, blah, blah. Now, the thing I hope that everybody sees from this, because once we go through the next chapter is going to begin to hopefully give clarity to all of this, because you'll start to recognize a lot of the names from here on out. Imhotep will be Osiris, things that you hear today in so-called Egypt, the history of Egyptians.
Phil,
We're-
let me make a comment.
Yes, sir.
There's one piece of this thing that I'm still struggling with. The historical facts and the scientific world. And only the reason that I think I struggle with it is because it's almost similar, scientific world is almost similar to that of the spiritual world, because we're constantly finding new things that lead us to say yes it is or no it isn't. So there's somewhat of a struggle, especially when I hear people talk about finding new planets, finding new blank, et cetera, et cetera. The scientific piece of it is kind of a little caveat out there also, even though we have identified how we looked at the world, the skies, the astrology, and all of the other things going on with it.
Now, keep in mind what you just said. See, we have to make a distinction here, because if what we've been reading has any degree of truth to it, these Africans knew all this stuff a long time ago. This book goes back a long time. And everything we're talking about that they're discovering to today, these Africans knew this a long time ago.
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning the African side of the piece. I'm trying to put things in my head of what my knowledge base is. And my knowledge base has to do with the scientific piece. My knowledge base has to do with the historical aspect of it, and it has to do with the religion, with the the faith base.
But now keep in mind, science as we know it is an invention of the European mind. Okay? It is, in some instances, it is factual. See, the thing we have to make sure we understand about everything, I talked to a good friend of mine, Leon Dixon, who I regard as being a pretty intelligent fellow. Okay? And he said, True, the biggest thing that's hindering us is we don't know what we don't know.
And I agree with that, 100%.
We are so short on factual information because in the schools, for the most part, what we've been given is white interpretation of something. It's not based on any facts anywhere. They don't even distinguish now between theories and laws. A law is something that's proven, and it is. Theory is, now we have people today in the university, they tell you that the earth started out as one big land mass, and then somehow it broke apart into all these different continents. Okay? Now the thing that nobody bothered to ask is, there was no white people around at the time of this event. The only people on the planet was us. And we didn't say any of that. That is not what we said. Okay? But they sell this idea as gospel in the universities now. And you have to stop and tell people, hold time out. That's a new invention as a result of getting computers. Before they got computers and were able to manipulate all these land masses and kind of make them fit together, that was not how they taught the origin of man. Because if that's true, how is it that this man keeps telling you about all these different exodus that these people have left Africa and went to these places? They wouldn't have to have gone anywhere. They'd have been on one when it broke apart, if that were the case.
Let me try to explain to you what my dilemma is. When we use the word, talk about science, my whole base had been that, theory. What the theory is of it and what
The reality.
yeah, reality. The piece that's bothering me a little bit, even though I go back to Africa, and I ask this group the same question, where did the black folks come from? Don't have an answer for that.
No, we don't.
The same thing is with white folks and anybody else that want to put their theories out there.
Well, we know where they came from. We just don't know how this started. That's the
Okay,
question we
well-
can't answer. It's how did all of this start? That we don't know. But what we do know is that the oldest people are us. And everybody else derived from us and our migration and movements and climatic
came to color.
conditions. Okay? So that we know even scientifically.
And
they
see,
know.
therein gives me the positive aspect of me, to be able to at least grab that piece of it and be able to take the facts and take it back to that point, so that if in discussions with other people, I can at least talk about it. That who was the first, that known persons, whether it's historical or otherwise.
I'm glad we had I known that. I have a number of documents, but I have a Newsweek article that they did using DNA to study and find out where man originated, and I'll bring the article next week because I showed it to your sister yesterday.
Do we really believe in DNA?
Well, we know that there's a genetic strand that does some things, and yes.
But see, I'm talking about, do we really believe in the scientific
Yeah,
aspect?
and that's a good
Well-
question in terms of,
We don't have to believe that, but
Of
there
how
are
we
some.
use it,
yeah.
of how we
Even
We
they can
know
be
that
manipulated.
there are cells in one's body, and these cells, depending upon how they come together, make different things. Okay?
Okay.
So if they want to call it DNA, I don't care, because they're the ones. Unfortunately, we keep using his definitions for our reality. That's part of the problem. Is that when you name something, you take dominion over it. You see, and we keep using his definitions on something that really he knows very little about. Like, I don't know if you were here that day, but the first chapter of this book, because even in here he talks about the corpuscle or the ghost. Now, when Dolores was here, she said a corpuscle is your blood, and most people think of corpuscles as blood cells. But if you go back to the definition he has here, that the periodic law of the corpuscle, it's a negative particle of electricity, 1/1000th the size and weight of an atom of hydrogen, that travels at 100,000 miles per second. It can penetrate the thickest block of steel. It never dies. And this is the thing that they say God made that makes everything. Now, if you understand atomically how these things adhere, you'll see the law works. 1 is a dot. 2 makes a straight line. 3 forms a triangle. 4 forms a square. 5 forms a square with a dot in the middle. And then they go on to tell you about each one of the rings and how this thing builds. Well, that would lead right back to the DNA strand. Okay? So, the reason I know part of this is true is long after I had read this, I was looking at a TV show one morning, and these guys from Harvard said they had found this particle much smaller than an atom. And there it is. Now, the reason I'm saying some of this stuff has validity to it is take, for example, page 148, 152 in our book. 152. They're talking about how old the pyramid is and who built it on the page prior and this page, okay? They tell you what the thing is, during the whole of the stellar lunar there's no Hercules, blah, blah. And then they go on to tell you that there are records extinct, left by the stellar cult people of 10 great years. No record of time can be made before that. So they're not betting on the come. They're saying, we got this information. The rest of the world, clearly, there's no way they would let this information out in what they have on the next page. Because if this became common knowledge, you have destroyed education as we know it in the world. You set the whole thing on its ear. Because if in fact it says, therefore, now they're talking about the pyramid, mind you. It must have been built at least 269,870 years ago. Now, a couple things, if you don't know, let me just lay this on you. The only people that are that old is us. This predates the demelanized African, i.e. Caucasian. This predates what we would consider the Asian. The only people that have a history that old are people from Africa directly. But notice it says this may be difficult for some people to believe, but records of the past prove it. So he's not talking about what he thinks, he's talking about what they have access to. Now, keep in mind, if you've been reading, especially this last chapter and the next one, you notice all of the coding in there for the Masonic stuff. There's a lot of Masonic coding in this. I haven't said this before, I'll say it again. He did not write this book for black folks in America. He's talking to his white constituents and the aristocracy of England with this. So they're telling you what they know they have in the British Museum, what they know they have in the Louvre, what they know they have in the Vatican. They've got miles and miles of library and artifacts that they have stolen to go back and reconcile what they're talking about here. So in the case where we're talking about church war, the reason I like him is this dude's a straight up racist. So make no mistake about it, he's not talking about us. Let me pass this little picture around. Now this is out of the Freemasonry book. Look at closely what he says. The home of the pygmies, they know where all man started. Okay? But look at what he says and the names he gives these people. All of them are Negro. But notice carefully, the Niletic Negro and the Masaba are the ones that go to Egypt and do all this stuff we're reading about. Notice the people that go to West Africa and South, what he says about them. Look at that and pass it on. He refers to them as the true Negro, meaning these Negroes here had nothing to do with that great stuff the Niletic boys did. Make no mistake about it. So his racism is clear. That's why I love using his data, because he's not talking to us. He's talking to his fellow constituents, and when you go to their institutions, you can see the stuff everywhere. One of the weeks we need to take that trip over to that Linda Hall Library and let you go in there, and what we're studying and talking about right here, they have the actual documents in the building under lock and key. Everything we're talking about right here, they can go, yeah. Now we do know one thing for sure, and that's why, if nothing else, the significance of the great year, that throws everything we supposedly know about history into total disarray. Because there's no history being taught anywhere in any school I've been to that goes back 30,000 years, let alone 300,000. When you go to any school, they tell you it all started with the Greeks or Mesopotamia. That's where everything started. Well, those civilizations only go back 3,000 years. Now, if that's where it started, how do you explain having knowledge of the zodiac? It's impossible for you to know this because, figuratively speaking, you're not, if you're in the northern hemisphere, if you're north of the equator, you cannot see any of them constellations down south. Ever. You can only see this side. The other 6, you will have never seen them. And we know we have this information.
How did they miss this new planet that they're saying that they just found?
Well, that again, you're going by what the Europeans said. Have you ever heard of the Dogon people?
Yeah, I have heard of them, but I'm not sure I know that.
Okay, these Dogon people have been talking about things that these white boys are just now discovering. They've been talking about that for hundreds of years. Got it painted on their face. Sirius B, until white people got a telescope, they could not see that star that these people had painted on their forehead. So again, see, that's the part of the story they don't want you to know. Because if you ever get down to where we are, their story falls apart. If it started with who you say you are and where you claim to be, how in the world do you have this information? Also, the pyramids. There's 72 pyramids in the Sudan. Now, the people in the Sudan look like this. Okay? Now, so no problem. You built 3 by some spacemen on the Giza Plateau. These homeboys got 72 there, and the further south you go, the more there are. There is a cone pyramid in Zimbabwe with a wall around the whole city. The word Memphis, not Tennessee, but in Egypt, the word Memphis meant white wall. So these people had been working in stone for at least 50,000 years that we know of. But see, if they let that out, their whole white supremacist story falls apart. And therein lies the problem. That if what in fact we are reading and studying today is real, then everything we've been told in school is definitely suspect. You can't have it both ways. That's also true for religion. If what these people are saying they based all this on, all their knowledge came from practical application and experiences they had. They were not in the I believe business. They were not in the faith business. Because if they didn't get it right, death is the option. Even to where we are now. If you get up here, they're beginning to now venture out, talk about some other things. Things are beginning to change. The solar people are now doing some other kinds of things that their predecessors didn't do. But the further you get away from the original source of something, especially when you're passing the story down orally, you already know what's going to happen.
Telephone. Playing telephone.
So we're now getting things thrown into the deal that weren't in the deal. What's the most significant thing that is happening right now? We're now dealing with the solar people. Somebody tell me because there should be a couple names that jump out at you.
Well, Atum is equivalent to our atom.
Thank you.
And it says on 231, when Adam is said, well, I know you probably don't want to go that far. It says when Adam is said to be, it's several pages I folded down that had good stuff on it. This is a good chapter. It's said to be the Lord of oneness. That is but a way of calling him the one God, the culmination of all powers in one supreme power. All the various gods and goddesses were but representations of various powers, attributes of one God. And then I skip down, it says, without limit is beyond the finite, and consequently equal to the infinite. Teru, T-E-R-U, also signifies time. The name therefore conveys the conception of beyond time. And remember when I said we believe our God is infinite and we are finite?
Mm-hmm.
That's after this atom was that.
That's right.
This atom.
Exactly. See, if I were going to steal something and take over the world, and there had been a group of people who had been running the world for hundreds and thousands of years successfully, just take what they have, put your name, address, and phone number on it, make it look like you, and keep on stepping. You don't, why reinvent the wheel? These people have a long history, so all I need to do is step in there, take their history, tell you, don't go over here and look anymore, this is taboo. And everything I have at my disposal now, because not only are they talking about how things that were mythological are now becoming human. They're giving them life to these stories now. Now, the problem with that is one thing. I have no problem with Horus becoming Jesus. The problem is when you take Horus and make him Jesus, and then you add in the piece about he died for your sins and you get a clean slate, there you have, now you got a problem.
But we haven't read that yet. We haven't got there yet.
Oh, okay.
So you keep going to that end.
Okay.
We ain't got there.
So we're still on 232?
Yeah.
Okay, on 232.
Well, it has some more interesting stuff too. It
Okay,
talked about
go
on
ahead.
that 231.
All right, keep going.
It talked about the Sphinx.
Right, that's where I was going.
Okay, were you?
But go
Okay,
ahead.
It talks about the Sphinx. And it says, we learn from the ritual that the mystery of the Sphinx originated with the Mount of Earth as the passage or place of passage of burial and rebirth for the solar God, The still or Ptolemies, T-A-H-T-M-E-S, informs us that the Sphinx was built to commemorate the sacred place of creation. Of the first time.
This is spelled with the A. That turns into Thutmosis. It'll turn into T.
It'll turn into T.
Yeah,
In
with
this
the
same
O.
chapter, it turns
Right.
into that. The fact is that the Sphinx was carved out of the rock at the exact, this was what was interesting to me. The fact is that the Sphinx was carved out of the rock at the exact center of the earth as a lasting witness to that sacred place of creation or beginning, which goes back to the domain of Set and to the days of the masters of Ker, or the figure of the primitive abyss or void.
Okay, so what is that saying right there? Make it plain, as they would say. What do you have to know in order for you to put something in the exact center of the earth?
You gotta know where the center of the earth is.
Thank you. You'd have to know the circumference of the earth to begin with.
You gotta know a whole lot to do that.
Okay? So that's what I'm saying. Like, we're talking about science versus what white people are. These people knew this information a long time ago and put a building there to let you know they knew it.
Yeah.
It also, well, we're past it. But if you look at where it talked about on the pyramid, it told you the distance to the sun in relationship to the building. The calculation of the base gives you your day. It recorded everything you needed to know about natural facts and laws were on that building. And if they did that 300,000 years ago, keep in mind, did I bring that book this week? I didn't. They had, I'll bring him back next week. They had a glider in the pyramid. A little airplane glider like we have today. They had one of them in there. They
I'm just
also
looking
had a
at that
boat.
right here.
Huh?
I'm just looking at that right
Thank
here.
you. Okay. So that tells you they knew about a whole bunch of things that they have not allowed you access to.
There's never an airplane.
See that little glider?
Yep.
Okay.
Didn't they also have like something that we think is a UFO? They had like a little, it was a plane, but the white folks have now transferred where it makes it look like a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then they got the, what are they called? The portalones, the maps that are just as perfect as a map today, and it's obvious that it was taken from above in order to, like almost from space, in order to get the exact intricacies of what's actually on the maps, but they're laid out flat. In the Vatican, they have those in the Vatican.
Well, that probably brought on the theory that the black people couldn't have done this, so Martians came down, or what do they call them, extraterrestrials, helped them because, you know, they couldn't, of course, they couldn't mask this type of
Technology
intelligence.
before we did it.
Yeah. So, I think that's where that problem comes from.
And that's what's insane. It's like if you take a man that was born in those times, because you know even by their science, sapiens is what 120,000 years by their definition. So basically, sapiens is the same as us. So if you took one and had to keep his mouth shut and put current clothes, it's exactly the same as us. So how could someone not have the mind? If we have the mind to do it today, why would we not have the mind in a pure sense? Because we are, we're pure people.
I contend that these people, as far as intellectual,
Was
they were
way-
operating
Oh, yeah.
on a way
Oh,
higher
wait, they was
plane.
on a whole
That's what
different
I'm saying.
level.
That's what I'm saying.
They
That's
had
what I'm saying.
third eye open.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
We're
they operate
corrupted.
on a place
Anything
that we're not even
anything-
close to.
Yeah, anything
Right.
as time goes on, you go away from its original.
As I sat here, some questions that I asked about 10 minutes ago. Are we getting smart?
No.
And
I watched the
you
movie
just answered the
Idiocracy the other
question.
day.
No.
But I think what we have evolved to though, is we have evolved to understand the knowledge that we have and how to apply the wisdom to that knowledge.
I think.
Otherwise we wouldn't be progressing any in terms of.
But how are we progressing?
Are we progressing?
Yeah, I mean, we've got
Yeah, look at
global
technology.
warming, anarchy.
I'll just start with
overpopulation.
technology.
Okay.
Look at technology. Are you saying we had the same technology back then?
Possible.
I didn't say we didn't, but that's the reason I'm asking the question. I'm just, when you're inquisitive of trying to understand where it is.
Okay, but let's take the flip side of that coin.
Yeah.
Now we have all this great technology. Let's use this for example.
So-called.
Okay, let's just use this for example.
So it doesn't mean that-
Is this a positive or a negative with
Absolutely
respect to the earth?
Yeah, and if you're living
So
in
this is not
nature-
progress, we're actually going backwards.
And I was gonna say that.
Okay.
All this that we call technology.
Thank you.
You can
Absolutely.
really, you see, it all goes back to, I guess, it's, we said in class, and he said in the time in class, is that I think the difference between us and these early ancestors of ours, it appears that everything they did was in harmony with
Yes.
the universe, as opposed to us, everything we do is in disharmony.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Our creations, our inventions, our thought, our logic, it's crazy.
In 30,000, what was it? 40,000 years, there hasn't been a new source of food, new food source that hasn't killed us. I mean, in order to exist, like even if you go to the Amazon today, those people have a way better understanding of where they live than we do.
And now he said that, like he said, to tap on that, Look at these foods today. We've invented a science
Of killing ourselves.
that
Okay.
inhabits us from even growing the necessary things that make us survive. Food,
yeah.
genetically modified.
Now, to that
Doesn't
same
even reproduce that
extent,
itself
But see,
anymore. It's
you-
crazy.
You made a point about how the earlier people basically were in tune with hunger. See, that's where I see the disconnect with us.
Yeah.
Most of us are selfish.
Yes.
The selfish aspect of us causes us to challenge each other. And when you challenge each other, you come up with one idea here, and you have to come up with 50 million different people saying that's what that one idea was, and can't even agree on what it is. At least that's what I see in the world.
It is that ego.
6% of the remaining water on Earth is pure. Only 6%. Now look at the massive size of this Earth, and we have managed to pollute 94%.
Wait, hold up, time out.
At least
Well, now
that's what's
we-
estimated. Well,
We
man,
need,
I'm
we
saying
need to
man.
put the, lane word.
I'm saying man.
Yeah.
When I say that, when
No,
not
no,
us, but I'm
That's
saying
where
man.
I was, man,
Yeah.
selfish.
Okay, but we have to understand, we went from people of color operating in harmony with the earth to, since the age of so-called discovery, there has been a new massa running things, and he's the one that put destruction to everything we have done. Not,
I agree.
look at the native people, indigenous here, they always lived in harmony with Mother Earth.
Yeah.
The white man is the only creature that comes along and actually thinks, as the last poet used to say, he has a God complex. He thinks he can live above the earth, and what you do down here doesn't matter. I mean, look at this last week. I only watched 2 or 3 things on television. MSNBC, maybe some sports, and the weather. Okay? But last week, they said if you eat turkey, hamburger, 90% of all the meats you buy in the grocery store have growth hormones put into, okay? And these things have now mutated in the animals till they have no antibiotics to fight this crap. So if you get one of these diseases from eating any of these meats that you get in the store, oh well, you're in trouble. Now, the only reason for putting all of this into the food supply or feeding the animals is to make them grow faster. They're not doing anything natural anymore, and that's where you get in trouble. Again, if we just, I tell people all the time, if we were to leave white people alone, they would crash and burn. If you get off their bus, leave them alone, they are destructive by nature. We can't let them go.
But the sad thing is, because of that destructive nature and because of that complex where they want to be
Degeneracy.
the head,
Over
they'll take
time.
all of us with them.
That's exactly what's happening. They are. See, I'll bring next week. Remind me to bring that Monuments of Mars book. I don't know if you're aware of this, but on Mars, they have a Sphinx. They have all of the monuments we have on the Earth. They have on a field on Mars. Okay. Now, most people have heard of Mars referred to as the red planet, but they never thought about what does that mean. If we continue to build nuclear reactors and use the fuel from nuclear reactors, and you go put then that water into the ground, you're going to have a red planet. You're going to make this place uninhabitable.
Well, they have come up with that here recently. They have an area where they say the water is red, and here in the United States.
These fools are putting it in
The water
containers
was-
and putting them in the mountains.
Well, the water was contaminated and it came down. Did you see that on the
That's
news?
because of gold.
Okay.
An old gold.
Yeah,
mine
an old
shaft
gold
that
mine shaft.
broke loose and all this.
But they're saying the water from a nuclear reactor is contaminated for at least 10,000 years. At least.
Yeah, probably more
Okay?
than that.
So,
Now,
so that Japanese nuclear reactor that
And we got them
Water.
everywhere.
Water.
We have them all over the place, and nobody has said, hey man, why do we need a nuclear reactor when the sun comes up every day, give you all the source of energy you need, okay? But they can't make any money off of the sun.
That's right, that's the reason why.
See, that, well,
They'll
anyway.
kill anybody that makes something they can.
And that's the one thing I've gotten from this class too, is how important the sun is.
Yeah,
The
and-
sun
and
is
that
life.
makes
The
some
sun
different things,
was
period.
life.
Yeah.
Is everything it says Jesus is.
Yes, everything that says Jesus
Right,
is.
morning star.
Yes, yes.
Everything, every attribute he has.
Last week we were looking for this. I couldn't find it in Keon's book, but this will show you how you look, your auric field, which means each one of us has a glow around us all the time, whether you know it or not. And everything you do, say, eat, whatever, affects this. Okay? Either positively or negatively. Notice they know about all your chakras. I haven't heard anybody in our schools or our churches tell us about your chakras and the importance of them. Okay? And these are your energy centers for your body. So when you get a blockage in one of them, you have a problem. But see, that's what I'm saying. There's so many things that they know about us that we have no clue about. They know how you look normally, on drugs. I mean, they know exactly how to play you.
When I used to
Speaking
have
on-
migraines.
speaking on what he
This
said.
is what they, told me to work with. And the chakra, I learned about the chakras at that
Now,
time.
show you how intelligent these folks was, as old as that information is. There's a PhD doctor. His name is Dr. Bob Marshall, and he does what you would call quantum nutrition. And he comes up, he says that there are traumas that your body may have experienced as a young child that actually blocks those synergies and sets up your ability to become efficient and become sick. Now, he says it in a different form, but that's exactly what he's talking about. People call his talk show and they say, well, I've got this, that, and the other. He says, well, how old are you, how much do you weigh? They give that information. After they give him their symptoms, he said, have you ever had a broken arm? Well, yeah. Have you ever had your liver taken out? Have you ever? And it's just mind-blowing to me. And what he says is that trauma to your body actually set up a force field to prevent
That develops.
your body from synthesizing and processing normally as it should. And of course, the poor diet just adds to that.
I had a guy come over. I had a dinner party at my place, and dude was over there, and he was like, he was looking at me, like looking into my eyes, and I was just like, man, what the heck you doing? And he goes, you've had your appendix out, and I was like, yeah. He basically read the flecks in my eyes. He could tell me what types of ailments, what I needed to counteract it. That's right. Exactly. He gave me, and he's a real sharp dude.
Is he a doctor?
No, he's in the holistic medicine,
Yeah.
and so he actually he said one day, because he was kind of in the wind doing his thing. He said one day he was driving and he didn't even know why. You know how when you go to the refrigerator to graze and you're like, what the heck? Why am I here? I just ate. Something took him to this store and he went out in front of it, and this old man was there and kind of gave him the game on how to learn, what to do, what to eat. But his thing is, cause I've been a vegetarian since I was like 20 years old, and the way he explained it was, if you eat what's in a geographic area to you, what you're putting in your body versus and what's going in that system will help you to build the immunity and everything. And so I kind of changed my diet around that.
Yeah.
I kind of eat.
Yeah.
Bee pollen is like that. If you're gonna ingest bee pollen, it has to be
In your
from a
geographic
region,
area.
honey,
Yeah.
stuff like that. If you get it from the region you're in, it has a better effect on it.
And he
And I
does
know that to
everything.
be
All
true.
of his whole
Yeah.
diet is that way.
As far as migraines,
This
like
guy
I
local?
said, I had to learn that.
Yeah, well, he
Counteract
lives in
that.
Ohio, but he came to my house about a year and a half.
Oh, he
about a
lives in
year ago.
Ohio.
You
It's
still
very
got-
hard
have
to
any
find,
contact with him?
Yeah, I got his number.
it's hard to find a good doctor of
Yeah, I got
holistic
some.
medicine here.
Is it?
Very hard. I've tried to find one, I can't.
Find
You
one?
know one? A holistic doctor.
I know,
Doctor of holistic-
uh,
It's not hard,
Black
it's
lady
would
that
you
always
take
do
it
yeah.
for what they say, I mean, it's not
Black
hard.
lady that
Some of
practices
them don't,
in
like I said,
Kansas.
with the
Big
migraines.
thing is to educate
There was a lady
yourself.
that told me
Yeah,
some
true.
things, but she wasn't that, you know, she didn't know a whole lot.
Okay, so we're still dealing with the Sphinx,
Yes, sir.
232.
Well, you can go on over there.
So that is, it's amazing how the Sphinx is the center of the earth. And in Judaism, they teach you that Israel is the center of the earth. In
Okay,
case you
okay.
guys didn't know that.
Okay. Okay, on 233, there's a name that
We had that book last week, huh?
should jump out at you.
233, a name that should,
233?
a name that should
It
jump
might
out.
be-
Is it a car?
There's a character called
Careful,
Ptah.
AKAR.
Okay, Ptah is the first male deity in history. Prior to the advent of Ptah, oh, we are at the end of this chapter. Okay, all right. So, okay, prior to the solar cult coming to a point now that it's going from matriarchal to patriarchal, Ptah becomes the 9th god in the order that we have developed thus far.
He's
The
the
7,
God?
yeah. The moon was 8.
Yeah.
Okay, Ptah is the next one. Ptah and the 7 netters is where you get God and the 7 days of creation. Ptah was the God who, keep in mind, now we're dealing with the sun, okay? So when the sun went down, that became a very frightening experience for these people because they didn't know where it went. But they knew they had to hopefully get it back again. So Ptah is the god that actually, and his workers, drills a hole through the earth, a passageway for the sun, so when it went down in the west, it could go through this passageway called Amenta and rise again in the east. Now, there's a lot of little things that spin off of this, which we're going to see in the next few pages.
Well, I
But-
got a controversial question
Okay.
with that theory. Okay, we're on the earth, and we have 24-hour days. Sun goes down, it's back up the next morning. I'm like, oh, okay. Goes down the next night, it's back up. Not gonna take me long to understand this process. Oh, it's coming back. I just give it some time. So with that being said, how do we further that theory that we're speaking about?
Now, you're talking about modern man in a 24-hour day. We're talking about primitive man and not having necessarily, if the sun goes down, I mean, you're assuming some things that aren't necessarily factual. You don't know if the sun's gonna come back up tomorrow.
That's true. And what I was going to, we also made, this is another theory, that the reason I posed that, to see if you would say this or go there. We now have what we call a 24-hour day, where the day's longer now.
It depends upon where you are on the earth.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
makes a
because-
big difference.
Yeah, 'cause
Absolutely.
if it's
Because-
the solar, if it's December 21st, you're gonna have a long night.
You know, when I grew up, I sit and listen to weathermen predict. They wouldn't come anywhere close. I mean, that's,
Yeah, animals predict the weather
Better than anything.
okay, but I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the news people. I'm talking about the men
Dan Rabbit.
side of it. They predict, and you know, you never could go by that. Today, they're more scientific with it in terms of tracking where it is here to here, and they can logically,
A little better.
yeah, understand. It's a little better from that standpoint. So that's the reason I'm saying.
Well, I drive.
Knowledge.
But that's not, no, wait a minute. You done forgot the
I
main
get rained
ingredient
on
as to
once a
how it
month
makes that
with
possible.
looking at this now.
They now have
Looking at
something
the
up in the
weather.
sky looking down on these things that can
Oh,
tell them that.
satellite.
Yeah, so it's not just a matter of they got
They-
more proficient
right.
in there. No, they have a way of knowing, okay, when we see these clouds, we know certain things are gonna happen. When we see these clouds, we know other things are gonna happen, and because we're now above them, we can tell you what's coming.
Yeah, but guess what? Back then, they had the same way. They didn't have anything above it.
But they knew.
understood the clouds, and they
Enable-
understood the
enable.
sun, and they understood the
Okay,
moon. and
let me
they
ask you
weren't
something.
represented.
Let me ask you something. What is the one thing that most people didn't have that since the advent of whites, you now use every day?
I'd say what?
Something very basic. Shoes. Your feet can tell you what's going to happen
Bare
to the
ground.
earth if you're barefoot. But since you started wearing shoes, your sensory mechanism is no longer connected to the source. You could tell what's going to happen. There's a chart, I don't know if it's in this book or one of the other, where it shows you all the different parts of your feet and what each one of those little parts actually control. The bottom of your feet actually are like your eyes. It can tell you about your heart, your lungs, the whole 9 yards by looking at your bottom of your feet.
That's the chakra book, ain't it?
Yeah, that's what the Chinese do.
Bam.
Yeah, that's what the Chinese do. They
Okay.
actually have
That's where they got it
these
from.
stone yards.
Bro, that's where they got it from.
Okay?
We used to have.
So
we used to have
if
one.
you were walking
Chinese
around,
people set up.
your feet and all the little sensory mechanisms would be working to clue you to what's coming.
That's just the modern day computer.
That in China.
I mean, basically what it is, you know, the cars today got all these sensors, all these gadgets and all that. There it is, right there.
Feet was one of the things that they
That's what you call that navigation?
Okay.
What is it?
See, again, all the indigenous people were doing what came natural. It's only when we got, if you think about it, until you got into Europe and the Ice Age, you didn't have a need for shoes. Now you have people in Africa are being given shoes every day. Okay? So what happens? You get further and further away from the natural things that you need to know so that you can be in harmony. Like you said, when what was that what was it? Typhoon or whatever came and when the animals saw the waves go up, when the ocean left, they said, "Hey, we got the book." Okay, nobody got killed except humans. All the animals went to higher ground because they knew, hey, if that water disappeared like that, something's about to happen and it's going to be tragic. Okay.
Ruh-oh, Raggy.
I think everything was saying but my premise right now has to do with knowledge and wisdom.
Say what?
My premise right now has to do with knowledge and wisdom.
You think
My
it's
issue-
better now?
No. My issue is, the more knowledge we get, and I think that took place back then. The more knowledge they had, the more options they had in terms of making decisions.
That's right.
And because of that, I think that same thing is starting to evolve in our, and let me use the word our, man, in our day-to-day living, including the satellites, you name it, all of those things. That is the knowledge base that we gain, and our wisdom is getting better. That's all I'm
The
trying to
problem
say.
is that we're relearning stuff that we already had
Absolutely.
experienced. Okay, I was reading over here in this book, and it talks about the periodic law, and it says that these corpuscles the atomic value of them could make you optimistic or pessimistic by bombard your body with certain things. Okay, you'll either knock off certain atoms or you'll attract certain atoms. Okay, but the thing that's the most profound that he says in this book is nations have risen and fallen by not observing this law.
Yep.
And he goes down through history. Now, the reason I pulled this book out, this is Church Wars teacher. And Massey said, if you can tell time, you can predict prophecy. Meaning, if you know about the great year, you will know what's going to happen in each one of these eras because it's happened before. And they recorded it. The problem we have is we have no idea where we are in the course of time. Right now, we're dawning the age of Aquarius. So we're right here in the Piscean age, getting ready to go into the Aquarian age. Notice Pisces is the two fish, symbol of Christ, okay? And the next one is the water bear. Now, I could be confused, but just in the last year or so, haven't the earth starting having water problems all of a sudden everywhere?
Yeah.
Huh? And we think that's just
plus
by
or-
happenstance?
Plus or the negative in California. driving by.
Because they know things are going to change. Like right now on the West Coast, they're talking about El Nino, okay? All it takes is 3 degrees for the water temperature to change, and you change the whole atmosphere of the planet. See, we're looking for something catastrophic, and it's something very minor.
Yep.
Because now you throw the fish off, okay? All the whales, all these things that migrate up and down that coast, they do that in cold water. Notice the whales, they're closer to
Cold,
Alaska than they are to Mexico. Okay? Now, if you change, and they said the water temperature is changing.
I
Okay?
think that has to do with the sharks coming in. So
It has not only that, there was beaches that had crabs just galore. Okay? Now, if we had the Native American people still here, they could tell you these things.
yeah,
Huh? The 100-year flood, the 500-year flood. But because we have done away with all the indigenous people, you did away with the knowledge. Knowledge is accumulated from experiences.
You made the word, you used the word we're reusing or relearning, and I think that's the value of this class. We, not only are we relearning, we have thrown all of that other stuff away, and we now, when we find something, we think it's new, and it's not necessarily.
Well, no,
It's
this,
a reapplication of
Yes.
what took place back then, and now we're trying to pull it
How it's been
forward
distorted.
as my own, or I did it, or et cetera, I think.
but the reason being because most of the people that are dabbling in this only got this much of the story. There's a guy in the state on the other side, okay, that is a perfect example. He got Sir Wallace Budge's book on the Osiris resurrection, okay, and flipped the script from, oh, I thought the only person who had a resurrection was Jesus, and now found out that that story goes back to Osiris. Well, we know that story goes back way past Osiris.
Yeah.
But he has started a whole new cult following based upon contemporary information, okay? Now, that's the danger, that if you only know this much of something, that's good in some instances. But I use the term, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That's where we've been operating, okay? Most of the people whose so-called leadership we've been following is the one-eyed man. Because I'll be honest with you. Now, maybe you all know something I don't, but I don't know anybody else that has these books and has read them. Nobody, and I've been across the country. I know Dr. Clark, I know Dr. Ben, I know Leonard Jeffries, I know Ivan Van Sertima. I know all these guys personally. This is not somebody I read about. I know and have talked with them. And I can tell you for a fact, Dr. Clark's the one who told me to read this. None of them had read this one. Absolutely none of them had read this one. Or this one. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm special, but I'm just telling you what the facts are. Now, and they did great things in their time. It's like Elijah Muhammad. He took people from being Negroes and colored and moved the dial, okay? I believe my job is to move the dial a little further. My wife gets mad at me every week that I'm not out articulating Dr. Clark's information, saying I have all of it that he's ever printed. But I told her, I said, I don't need to be another Dr. Clark. I need to be Phil True. You can go online and get Dr. Clark's information. I don't need to be the source for that. You can get stuff from Dr. Ben, Ivan Van Sertima, Asa Hilliard, but you can't get this anywhere but Phil True and the few people along the way who've become students of this information. Now, that doesn't make me all that in a bag of chips. It just happened that way. But when you have this kind of information, and trust me, when you get into this book, I promise you, especially those of you who know the Bible, you're going to be on a whole nother plane. You will have taken this to a place very few, if any, people can't even imagine. Because what they're telling you is how you can actually accomplish that God level and having your eye opened and what you need to do to accomplish it. I don't know anybody else out here telling that anywhere. No church, no temple. What do they call it, Jewish? Synagogue. They're not in that business. Because as we were talking about earlier on the way over, most churches are institutions based upon gathering money and power. They're not in the salvation of your soul business. If they were, they would tell you you need to be healthy first and foremost. If this is the house of God, then if you 300-400 pounds, what's wrong with this idea? You see what I'm saying? And I know, at least in Kansas City, I've been here about 15 years. Some of the biggest people I know are the heads of these churches. Preachers and deacons.
Big boys.
Okay? The one thing they need to be preaching above all else is you need to be healthy. Especially as you get older.
Can I touch on that?
Absolutely.
Cookie is my witness. I don't know if Cookie knows it, but I did.
What's that?
Because I travel along this road. Dr. 3 did something that he normally doesn't do. Sunday, what was that?
He asked people to come up and if they needed prayer,
How many people got up?
the whole church.
Just about the whole church.
Hello. And I thought to myself, we in the house of God. That many people sick up in here?
And it is that many people sick.
There's something wrong.
There's something wrong.
There's something wrong. And just like you said, why aren't pastors preaching this to their people?
Are you serious? I mean,
No, man.
are we in this plan?
They don't
90%
know.
of the
Why are y'all
congregation
serious?
got up in the line.
Yeah, they don't know any better.
Are y'all
No, it
gonna be
wasn't
off?
just sin. I know it.
I know that always
But it was
throws
everything.
you
But I'm
off.
It
saying
does.
that
Y'all be asking
that
some
most of
questions.
those people
Yeah.
I ain't ready.
have physical
I know
health.
what you're saying. I know what
Okay, the
you're
only
Same thing
3
on
pages
What is
left in this
religion,
chapter.
guys?
And
All
I'll even
right.
say for the psychological part too. Isn't this what this is supposed to be about? It's supposed to be helping that too. It's supposed to help you mentally, spiritually. and
Look,
physically.
let me just.
No,
I
it's
think the
not.
thing that, I think like.
It's
I think
not.
What Keon is trying to say, and you correct me if I'm wrong. The sad part is, what we're learning, they don't even know.
That's true.
I know.
That's very true.
They really don't. They've gone to seminary teaches none of this.
Exactly, but I'm saying that.
But it ain't. It wasn't supposed to teach them that. I mean, religion was made to control you.
Yeah.
To what is religion in one of them? You know, I don't think it's Greek or something, but it's to shackle. You know, that's what it means in like one of them places. Like, go ahead.
But if you put the wall between spiritual and who we are, man,
Uh-huh.
and how we live, if you put the wall, what you get is in church, ministers don't preach the spiritual side.
They not
don't.
supposed
Yes,
to.
Well, understand, listen to what
Go
I'm
ahead.
saying.
Go ahead.
And because they don't connect you to that piece totally, they're connecting you to strictly how you live, your experiences and what you know and how you respond to life under those circumstances. When I stand up and ask you and tell you that, hey, look, I just feel that somebody in here needs prayer. And you get the whole church and come up there, what is it that causes you to move?
Emotionalism,
Okay, but what is emotionalism?
feeling.
And that's the point that I'm making. Every individual probably had a different reason
And you know what else
for getting
happened?
out of that chair.
And you know what else happened once y'all got back to that chair?
Uh-huh.
Plate.
That plate came and y'all donated bigger.
No.
Yes, you did.
No.
It was at the end of, it was at the end of church.
This is at the end of the
End
service.
of the
Nothing
service.
else to take place after that.
See, if in fact you were being
Gotta get
fed,
the comeback.
there's no reason at the end of the
Make good
service
people.
that you need to go get a meal. You should have already had it.
And I will agree with that 100%.
But-
The issue that he is leading to, he had just talked about the issue of having to have more knowledge of reading the Bible, studying the Bible, getting more acquainted, increasing your faith in terms of what it is, where you're trying to go.
Can we get to that book?
Yeah, so,
Here's the problem.
Y'all with this book.
With all due respect to the Bible, and I think most of you looked at that thing from Dr. Ben that had the chronology of the Bible.
Yeah, I still have it.
There's at least 3,000 Bibles in the world. If you only have one, and the author is King James the Drunken Gay from England, I'd say you probably need to get a few more Bibles and get a better story and a bigger picture of what the Bible looked like before the English took and changed it. Like we were talking about, the Church of England.
Yeah.
Why did they need a Church of England? Let's get the little history here. The Church of England was only developed because the English people were trying to get into the slave trade, and the slave trade was controlled by the Pope in Rome, and they could not get sanctioned because of the behavior of James and his daddy, both of which were homosexual. Okay? So they said absolutely, unequivocally, no. So what did they do? They said, we're going to start our own. Then we don't have to be under the domination and control of the Pope anymore, and we can do what we want to do.
that's not the only religion that did
No doubt.
that.
But
Most religions
Did
started
that.
no
There
question.
ain't no way.
No question.
And that's what we were talking about coming up on our way.
Now, but keep in mind, all of these religions were in what business? Slavery.
Slave business.
So they weren't in the
That's
business
true.
of doing anything
That's true.
positive for you.
That's true.
So for you all to have went and joined your oppressor's ideology and bought it hook, line, and sinker, and then you sit up here on Sunday, and at the end of the service, they said, anybody need prayer, and everybody runs down front. I guess so, because they weren't never intending for you to get the information you needed. That is not the object of anybody's religion,
No, ma'am.
and especially the people that don't look like you.
I agree with what you're saying, but you have to put in place and how all of this evolution came about. I'm gonna go back to two more words again. Knowledge. If you don't have it, you don't do anything but what you know.
That's right.
You don't do anything but that which you are associated with. And the wisdom that you have and how you use that knowledge comes about the same darn way. Whether you have been studying the Bible, and if the Bible is what you've been studying and that's what you've become to believe in terms of faith, etc., you tend to respond to that on that little line of crime and no crime. Otherwise, if you don't have the Bible and you haven't been reading it, and it leads you to the other side.
Here's the
So
problem,
it's
though,
knowledge and
that
the
we
choices
suffer from
you-
that nobody else experienced. We're the only people that were literally ripped out from our homeland and had our culture and our knowledge erased.
Yeah,
No doubt about
Okay.
it.
that's what it was.
So that's the problem for us, is we're operating, as I like to talk about, if you're not working your plan, you're working somebody else's plan. We are working somebody else's plan, and right now, we don't have, as Farrakhan would say, the fortitude to get off the bus. Because it's not working for us. It has never worked for us. And let me be first to tell you, if you haven't heard this before, it's not going to work for you. You are never going to get blessed using his roadmap and ideology, because it wasn't this. I tell people, we didn't start the Democratic Party, we didn't start the Republican Party. So if you want to have something that works, you need to start one of your own. But we're stuck on stupid, doing somebody else's bidding every day, building a better world for someone other than ourselves, and don't understand why this is not helping me 1 ounce. We're going backwards. There was more businesses in America in 1900 than there was black owned than it was in 2000.
Phil, I give you your due from the standpoint of what you believe. The same thing with everybody else around this table. And if in fact you have a inner system or a lifestyle or whatever it is, and you're living that from that perspective, no matter what book you pick up and read, you either have feelings that this is correct or this is not correct. And when you take, understand me, you don't, if you don't understand, even if I read two things, I'm gonna come to a conclusion that this is better than this.
Okay.
People, that's just the way we're made. We're not made to sit here and say, oh, everything's flowery, everything is the same. That's not the way man is made. We are made that if we read two books, we're gonna come up with a conclusion, one way or the other. And the question is, what caused you to make that choice to either do this or just do this? That's what I'm talking about. I'm operating right here.
A lot of it is semantics, and like for example, in Latin language, there's a difference between like ser and a star in Spanish. Ser is to be. There's something that's absolute, and then there's something that's conditional. There's really no delineation between that, and so by nature, just speaking this language, we're a little bit confused. And it's a confusing language.
But I'm trying to answer Phil's question of why would we take a look at the Bible, and why would some of us fall hook and hook?
But we know why you fall hook and sinker. I mean, like, you know.
The logic in the Bible, there's
It's
a
illogic.
Huh?
The illogic.
Well, that's your
Hold on,
position.
go ahead.
You see what I'm saying? That's your position.
Okay, you said the
I'm
logic in
saying
the Bible.
that
Go
the
ahead.
things that I read in the Bible has lots of logic to it for living. And when I look at that from that perspective, that's what I use. Not necessarily who wrote it, where it came from, and all of those stuff. I look at it from the standpoint that, one, I do believe in God, and the second thing is, the logic that I read fits with my lifestyle and what I should believe, or what I am believing.
Okay.
And I agree with him in
but-
terms of this,
I agree.
that logic that he's referring to, you have to understand where its origin was from. So it's not illogical in that sense.
Let me-
What's
they
the
take
basis
in
for the
is-
world that we're living in today, which means it makes sense to you, because everything that is
That they're putting around you will make you make sense.
yeah, it makes sense.
You're
because it's
conditioned
based
for
on-
it to make sense.
But you
and the
are
world is
special.
conditioned.
See, you're special. You have Phil and all of the people around you to let you know, we've not been
Yeah,
privy
oh,
to this.
No, no,
before
and I-
this time.
And
And I'm
He
just
gets
saying,
that.
I give you.
Yeah,
respect
no, and I
to
totally
have something
get
different.
that, you know, and this is where I look at, like, we're all getting, you know, we get upset with the situation. It kind of like where he was saying when he showed the
the graph of the feet and everything, and he automatically said it was from Asia. I mean, he's like, oh, that's what the Chinese do. But it goes back to what Phil said. Once you say something, they have power of that. And that's where we've been conditioned of, you know, anything we give power to somebody else. So you would never find your true godlike
Yeah.
if you keep saying, oh, the Chinese did this, do that. That's why he's
No,
trying
the Chinese
to say.
do it. I didn't say they did that. I
Of
said
course,
they do
everybody
that.
does it because
No,
they
we
got
don't
it
do
from
it.
us. We do it. We just don't do it here in America. And this is where I'm going with
I'm saying, have you ever done that?
America.
You, as a
Yes,
true
I have.
American.
Yes, I have.
Walked on the stones. Okay.
You know, we've been doing this for 10 years. But anyway, where I'm going with that is we keep fighting. America is based out of England. So anything that England do in America is most likely going to do. So again, this religion that's been made was for them. They came, like Phil said, they saw our stuff, and they took it and changed it like them, just like the Chinese did. Every race did that. They saw our thing and changed it to make it look like them. You can't get mad that they did that. That's the smartest invention, because this was not made for us.
But see,
We just happen to be the slaves of this ramification of what they're teaching their people.
See, you're preaching to the choir, man.
I
The choir, you're preaching to the choir.
I understand.
I don't disagree that going back and understanding where we came from and who we could and whether we're first, I don't disagree with that. What I agree with is if you take human mankind, and I'm just saying to you, human mankind responds to the things that they know.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you don't know it, guess what?
you won't you can't get the higher
You
rate.
don't deal with it.
But again, I think that was.
Deal with it. You either make a choice that's wrong or right.
But I think
or
that
you
was
make
their
a
job
choice
for
based
us
on what
not
you
to
know.
know it.
Yeah, I
That,
believe
when
that.
they first started this wasn't, hey, you know what, we're going to make those slaves learn this Bible. No, they was corrupting their own folks. They created a Jesus to look like them to corrupt their own folks. We got caught in that loophole. Do you see what I'm saying with that? You know, like that was over there in England when they came up with whatever, where they came up with the King James version. So that was for them to give they people some kind of hope.
Is somebody trying to get in that you know?
Somebody we know.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, but you know, if you go back to those times, one of the other things that you're gonna find is the same selfishness within those people.
Of course, and that's what I'm saying.
And, you know,
Basically,
you're gonna have
what
them doing
Phil
the
is
opposite
teaching
of
and
what
what
the
these books are
harmonious piece
teaching.
of it that we
When I
want.
worked in the caves with the Indians, there was an Indian shaman that would come in and talk to us, the ones that wanted to listen to him, and everything that he's saying as far as the Indian culture, that's what he says, as far as what the white man did to them, and took their inheritance away from them, took the knowledge. Their children know nothing about their heritage.
Right.
Because they're all going up in the world today.
Yeah.
And that's what they're grasping.
Yeah, they
They
weren't
don't
able to
know
find-
how to live off the land, how to look at the stars, just like what he's saying, and know when it's time to plant, when it's time to go out and hunt. They know nothing about
But
hunting.
just because the people that taught it didn't know anything about it. They coming from a cold place. Do you see what I'm saying? We're living in a place that's just like when we saying with the meat is Torah. Well, what we came with is what we could probably eat meat. It's probably the lion, it's elephants. It's where we come from, which is over in Africa. That's what our system is based on. We're not used to this new stuff. Because I'm not saying we're not supposed to be here in America, but we're not supposed to be
You're
here in
not
America.
indigenous to America.
That's right. And so we keep fighting that and not understanding that. Like, everything's going to mess up with us because we're in a foreign land. We're not in the land we're supposed to be to get our higher power. We're going off of some England thinking. We're going off the Indians thing. This is the Indians' way. This is how they supposed to do it. Now, if they came over here and tricked the people that had it, you know they're gonna trick us. But again, they didn't trick us. They did what they knew. They didn't have their third eyes open. So again, you're looking at white folks that have no talent on nothing.
But Phil makes a better point than you.
Well, of course.
Phil's point is, the books that he has in front of him, how many of you have read?
They probably
You know,
would.
that is a major point when we sit here and talk about why we act the way we do.
No doubt.
And that's the point that when
Look
I
at-
say
look at
you're
this.
preaching to the crowd, preaching to the choir, I'm saying the same thing. It still has to do with knowledge.
Now look at what this guy says in this. This is that Freemasonry book, page 56. It says the Christian cult is the only one religion in the world that was based upon the corpse instead of the resurrected, instead of resurrection in spirit. In no other religion is dependent upon the resurrection of the earthly body.
And we're gonna get to that, because that goes back to the last chapter, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we
But
can't
see-
get to the
Indians
end
don't
instead of.
believe in any of that either.
See, again,
And so-
I've asked you guys a few times. With what you've read, what you've seen, is your interpretation of God the same as it was before you started with this?
My interpretation of God is absolutely the same, because that God is even here, all these things you have here, is the ultimate creator of all.
I think maybe you should.
The,
Makes
the
you go
thing
deeper
that,
than
the
that.
thing that's questionable this for, and this chapter kind of brings it to a head, is when it talks about resurrection.
And I would respond just a little different, because that's a good question that you just asked. I'd respond strictly on the basis that, having gone through this course, I understand the historical documentation aspect of it much better. Has not changed my spiritual reflection yet, or I don't think it will.
Now, what does that mean? When you say-
I'm strong enough in the word.
You're strong enough in your faith
That's right.
to be sidetracked on what.
And that's where the knowledge and the wisdom causes me to make decisions. And I'm saying right now, my faith still would have me make the decision.
Mm.
Still believe.
Okay, now, this is what this stuff did for me. And granted, I've done a lot more than all of you, so.
Yeah.
But having been raised between my two grandmothers, one, and I was baptized and brought up Seventh-day Adventist. But my grandmother on the other side was kind of Pentecostal, if you will. But I now know that the idea of God as I was given is not the reality that the people who conceived of the idea ever said. They never said anywhere in any of these books that God is a genie passing out favors.
No,
Okay?
and we don't believe that either.
I don't believe that.
You see? Now, most people then, if you don't believe that, so you said, then praying to God does what? Why would you
Why would you pray?
And it doesn't mean he's passing out favors. I believe in grace and I believe in mercy, even back there.
I can answer that question.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Here, let's let him answer the question.
Unequivocally.
Okay, go ahead.
When I grew up, my father's father, his father, etc., have all been religious people. Okay? There was a Bible at that point, and they talked about how they lived and how slavery, and I'm talking about through slavery now, how they depended on each other to get through the process. And one of the things that they always talked about was singing and praying. Absolutely.
That what?
Okay.
Singing and praying.
Singing to God and praying.
Uh-huh.
Did it work?
And that,
Did it work?
I'm not in slavery.
But
They
hold
were.
on.
I know, but the point is, they were alive to be able to tell it. It's no different than the pygmies at that point. It's no different than the pygmies at that point. The pygmies lived through a process of learning
And who
how
got
to
them through that
live
process?
from the from looking at the
Who
stars
got
and
them?
everything
One being
else.
free, one being
I still think they
slave,
were, I still.
Are y'all
think-
serious right
Hold
now?
on.
Hold on.
though.
Wait a minute. Now,
Yes, I still.
okay,
think
we
they were.
have, wait a minute, stop for a second.
Bring class in order.
Okay.
Bring the class.
I still think there was divine guidance. I said that before.
Did y'all say the prayer and singing got y'all through
Bring the class
slavery?
in order.
That's
See, we
what-
just-
See, and my question,
Okay.
I think about slavery is why would God allow that in the first place?
Okay, hold
I don't
on.
see what you can learn from being castrated, raped, and held in. I don't see
The
how.
message
you,
that I
Judge.
get out of the Bible.
I don't see what God would
Well,
teach
let me answer. The message I get out of the Bible is my thoughts. What he says is my thoughts are not your thoughts, and your thoughts are not mine.
Wow.
And that's the part
Wait a
of the
minute,
Bible that I think that's
that's
been
what God told you?
misconstrued.
That's in the Bible.
I
Yeah,
don't
but
think
look
that's
whose Bible
true.
you got. Come on, man.
Phil, you
That's
gotta
almost as bad
Phil,
as God saying, "Give unto Caesar what is
I
Caesar's."
feel like
Like,
I'm sitting there trying to defend the Bible.
No. You're not trying to defend the Bible, and what you just said. You don't have to, because you got to understand. I mean, we was all raised in the church, So again, I went to a Christian school. I mean, my whole up till 4th, 5th grade, I went to Carver Christian school. So I had to learn the Bible. I'm the one actually had to read the Bible. But at the same time, what you just said is why they made religion.
Okay, but I don't. Hey,
And that is
I'm
what-
not trying to interpret what all of that means. All I can to
will
you.
go to faith.
I can only interpret it what it means to me.
okay, I don't know if you were
See, you-
here a couple of weeks ago,
You,
but one of the pastors
you
from
have
your
your own
church.
philosophy.
No, it's not a philosophy.
Sure it is.
Wait,
Oh,
hold up.
Phil, I mean, not Phil.
He'll tell you when we first started this class. I was about ready to leave.
But
But I
he's sticking
stayed
with
here for
it.
one reason.
Good.
Because I wanted to understand where Phil was going with this whole process. And I can tell you, he's converted me to a large degree from the standpoint of
Knowledge.
me trying to look at the knowledge that I've gained
Yeah.
and trying to place it within.
That's powerful.
Now, even if I take that knowledge now and I understand the Bible, what is being said with the Bible, there's one thing left for me to do, is to take the knowledge on both sides and then take the wisdom. In my opinion, I'm getting a lot, the value that I'm getting from the Bible in terms of the wisdom of how I live and how I treat others, has been much, much greater than I have in terms of looking at the historical documents.
Now, some of us have you at a disadvantage.
You know, too.
But
I didn't say that.
But
I'm
you-
using
what you guys need to do sooner rather than later, get this book.
Is that the guy, man? Bill?
Yes,
Yes.
get this book.
Yes.
Because the thing this is
That's
going
the
to
book
do,
we're gonna be next.
see, this was just a history book because that's what you asked me for.
Yeah.
The
That's
history
really where
of
we
how
came
how did we get to where we are? That's what this book is doing.
Have you read that?
Okay, historically. Now, and this is not, it was not intended to change your mind about anything.
Right.
Because keep in mind, who he was talking to was not us.
He wasn't talking to you, no.
But what I glean from this is a lot of knowledge as to how we got spun around and how we can reverse the process. I've said many times, here,
And do you need some paper?
Don't write on that because it'll go through.
Here.
Double it up. It'll go through the book, buddy.
I have said this even publicly and it's recorded. I said this at Southern Illinois University as while I was speaking. Now, I don't recommend any of you repeat this because it is a term of warfare. But this is what? The Star of David, okay? This is the symbol for the Jewish people, supposedly. The so-called chosen people of God, according to your Bible.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if your book looks like this, but.
It didn't have that in it.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
In this one, notice in the very center of the man, there's a Star of David. But which part of it is highlighted?
The upside down one, the upside down.
The part that is highlighted on this star is this one. First of which, if you know what that means, they're talking about the first deity, Set, and the southern pole star. Okay? But I tell people when they see this, if you want to regain your favor and greatness, you must reverse the process. When they took your knowledge and turned it upside down, they became chosen and you became niggas. And if you want to deniggerize yourself, you're going to have to take your stuff back. Plain and simple.
He says that all the time.
Okay?
That's true.
That is a fact. Because they have sold the world on this crap, made the world believe that God gave them some land. Now, if you really listen to the story, the way they sell it, God would be a bigoted, racist, kind of not nice person. If you really go through the Bible and look at all the torture and all the things God does to people for not behaving. Now, let's stop for a minute because I'm a leader. So things have to make sense to me. Plus, I'm a former computer engineer. Okay? So it has to be on or off. That's how my little mind works. Okay? God created everything. Is that true?
Yes.
That means the stars, the moon, the earth,
Us.
all of us. Okay? And God is not only all-knowing, all-seeing. Am I right?
Yeah.
Then God should have known before he created Eve that Eve was going to screw up.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I ain't mad at him for the experiment, but I feel really unjust that you hold me liable for something you made and you knew it was messed up when you made it. And now I got to pay penance for this for the rest of my life and everybody else. That is not logical. That is not fair. And it sure as hell ain't just.
And so, but we've had that.
Life is not fair and just.
But if it were the way you tell me, it should have been.
Wait a
minute. If I were
something that's solid.
Free will, choice.
Every individual, how we're made. Can we explain that in this book or anything else?
How you're made?
Yeah. Can we? I've asked these questions from
Yes.
day one. Yeah.
Yes.
Where did man come from? The stars and the stripes and the universe and all the other kinds of. But here's one thing that we had a class and I taught it. The issue of how our body is made. Take this.
You have to share.
Everything that surrounds you and everybody else in this room surrounds who you are and how you are here today. Your five senses. Your ears, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, etc. If you don't have them, what would you be? If you were not able to get any knowledge associated with those five senses, what would you be?
Are you talking about
Well, some of your other senses would just be hyphen.
That's like
Wait a
platonic.
minute, those are the senses. There are no other senses when you get past those. Those are the ones that gives you the knowledge.
No, there are more.
No, there are.
Okay,
There's
but
Yeah,
the
there are.
okay, I'll use this since I don't know what those others are. I'll use the critical senses of how you gain knowledge, or with those. If I don't see it, if I don't hear it, if I don't taste it, if I don't,
Now, here's the problem.
If I don't know those.
But that's
But-
that-
Let me finish my.
but your face supersedes all that.
Dissertation first. Okay?
And you're-
So once I understand and once I have gained anything in the universe associated with those five knowledges, that's to me that's knowledge to the individual. Now the next step is where I went before the wisdom piece of it. What do I do with it?
You have free will and choice.
Well, what do I do with it, with that knowledge? And what causes me to, or leads me into the direction to do anything with the knowledge?
Well, let me ask you
If
something.
I do nothing, I'm probably an imbecile, and I'm sitting
Wait a
around and
minute.
people look
I
at me.
think you're a pretty intelligent fella.
I do too.
I
I
don't
think
know that
you're
much
very
about you, but
intelligent.
what I heard about
Very
you is you were
articulate.
pretty successful in your
That
life.
has nothing to do with
Okay,
this.
now, but here, this is why I'm saying this. Because unfortunately, you only operating from here down. Okay?
I don't understand it.
You're
Explain.
talking about 5 and you have 7.
Yeah.
So you ain't even getting close to the ones you really need to have turned on. The light where you need to have it is off.
No, see, you're going beyond where I am. I'm strictly looking at knowledge.
Where do you?
I'm strictly looking at knowledge.
Okay, here's the problem. Because of our miseducation,
Yes.
you have been coerced and educated to be left brain dominant.
I understand,
Period.
I understand
Okay?
left brain.
Okay?
I really do.
Now,
I taught
the
it-
people
I taught
of
it in the
color
master's program at
that
University.
operated for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years on the earth were predominantly right brain.
That's right.
Okay? And your natural, if you were operating the way you're supposed to be operating, you should be operating at least in both hemispheres, but your dominant hemisphere should be right and not left is logical, you know, square little box, stay in
How
the.
do you get to what you're talking about with every individual in the world?
Well,
You can't. You
Can't.
can't
Well, that's the
because
point.
you don't control.
here, yeah. See,
That's the point that I'm
again,
making.
the system.
You don't
that-
control your thinking.
the
That's the point that I'm
system.
making.
If
Who controls it? Who controls your thinking?
for the most part, the white
Media.
media.
No. Who controls your thinking?
Who controls it?
Yeah.
Like for real?
No, you just asked the question.
The Rothschilds. And I hate to keep saying, y'all need to do research on that.
No.
They control it because they control the media. They control your money, and that's what we all controlled over. Is money and media, and them are the two things that they control. So right then and there, they control the world. That is what you consider God.
I'll go right
They
back
can.
to Phil's comment. Until people start reading.
But
these
they're doing left. They're
I'm
doing
just
left.
giving you-
They're thinking left brain.
Until they get the knowledge that you got in those 5 books, they're going to be controlled by TV,
Who do
the
you-
Bible,
but even-
everybody else.
Right. But if you notice,
That's all
there
I'm
is
trying
a
to say to you.
tendency
I'm
now.
agreeing
You
with
see
you guys,
more
but
and
I'm-
more people beginning
There's a
to
practical piece in this thing.
look
Yes.
outside of traditional
what the best
religions
ones
Oh,
for some
absolutely,
answers.
absolutely,
Okay?
absolutely.
Because not only is it that time, but most people have come to the conclusion after analyzing this, it's not working very well for them. Okay?
The thing, like you
So
said,
I need to
Good
do
point.
something else because this ain't working. As a computer engineer, I was the first in every position I ever had, and the only black. 90%, almost every job I had, I was not only the first, I was the only. Okay, and inevitably, I would train a white boy, and they would promote him over me.
Oh, absolutely, I've been there,
Okay,
done
or
that.
pay him more
Not too many
money.
people
You
in
feel
this
me?
room that ain't going through that.
Okay,
Been there,
so
done
you know
that.
what happened finally? I was the head of field engineering for a company called Silicon Graphics. They made a geometry engine that the B-1 bomber and some of these things are made off of, okay? I said, you know what? Now, I've been working for all these white corporations, IBM, you name it, fixing their stuff. I put the stuff on in JPL, NASA, all that. So I said, now damn, the only people that my customer ever see is me. And they have to pay for the parts. So why don't I stop working for Control Data and IBM and Honeywell and just go sell directly to my customer my services? Do you know that every one of my customers went with me? Because they had never seen the people from headquarters.
Phil, people tend to agree. Whatever benefits the average person in this world, mankind, they tend to lean towards that which is positive for them. People don't choose negative aspects of their life to live that way. Most people don't. they live positive. They take the thing, if I'm over here and you offer me food and no food, which one am I gonna take?
Food.
And that's the way mankind is designed. I think what you're doing is commendable from the standpoint of bringing this piece in, especially for black folks, to try to understand that there is a different approach to thinking, and there's a different approach to making choices. And if you don't spend the time to learn it, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna live in somebody else's world.
Right.
And that's where I was going with you in terms of thinking.
See,
You
we have to
not
go back
always
to the
thought this
premise.
way.
Knowledge
Before
is
that,
power.
you thought the other way because
Okay.
you went to that Catholic
And
school.
remember
Yeah, but-
that adage, that knowledge is power, but power is the ability to define reality and have other people accept your definition as though it were
And
their
what
own.
that reality
And that's the key that we miss. We keep looking to somebody that doesn't like us and using their reality for our experience, and then when it doesn't work, we go, damn. Okay? It wasn't designed for you.
Well, that's why I
Okay.
think spirituality comes in.
Absolutely. That's why
That's the key for me.
Look, what is if this is what this whole book is telling you. This is what you spiritually look like, okay? And they know it. So it's easy to press your button because I know what to do to get you off of balance. That's one thing I give these white boys. They have studied us for a very long time, and they know how this really works down to the most minute particle of how to play the game. The problem is, if we're ever going to get it back, you have to unplug from their system. And they said the person that's closest to God is the idiot. Somebody, you Down syndrome or whatever, those are the people that are actually closest to God. Why? Because they don't use
still have
analytical
that
thinking
innocence, too.
and deductive reasoning.
Yeah, they still have
Okay?
that.
They listen to the little voice.
Yes.
Now, if we did that every day, I promise you, your life will be better.
I don't disagree with you on that, but like you're saying, the people in this world are downsizing or going away from religion, and that's all true. But the thing of what they is, they still have the mentality that they have to find a leader, and they're going out and finding leaders that are not,
Absolutely.
gonna lead them where they need to
Guess
be.
what?
When, like, I understand what you're saying, that basically
Why do
it's
you need
all
a leader?
in here.
That's
And
what I'm gonna say.
No.
I agree
Here's
with
the
that.
problem. Do you guys think this just happened by accident?
Nope, no,
No.
no.
Okay? It was something spiritual that made this group come together.
Yeah.
And how many people are still standing? This started out as
About 10.
10, and now we're down to 3
Three.
or 4.
Three
Okay?
or 4. There's more y'all
But
than
guess
us.
what?
Yeah.
It becomes now a part of your debt load to pass the word.
Mm.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Because as they say, when God speaks to everybody,
Yeah, he does.
most people just don't pick up the phone.
That's right. You're absolutely
Huh?
right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I say I agree with what you're saying in the aspect that what we have is inside of us.
The universe
And until we
is
tap in
obligated
to it and
to
use
answer
it.
your questions if you don't deny the reception. If you ask, it must come back. Like we've been talking about forever. It's all a big circle. It's going to come back.
Absolutely.
Now,
I
you just
believe
want to
that.
put it out there so it comes
I do
back and
believe
don't
that.
bite you.
Yeah.
You have no choice. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
This is spinning. Everything in our world, our universe, is circular.
Yeah.
You do reap what you sow. That's why it's so dangerous to believe you can call somebody and get a pass.
Right.
But see,
Because
I
the earth don't
don't
understand that.
interpret it that way.
Hmm?
I don't interpret it that way. But we're gonna get to that. If
Okay,
we
we
ever
only
finish
have,
a chapter at a time.
okay, now,
Yeah,
as of,
I think the book that you're presenting us with
6 minutes.
is absolutely good for me. I don't know about the rest of it,
That's
but
good.
it's good for me.
now, this is where we are.
How much it
Next
changed,
week,
I don't know.
chapter 13,